The ladder to success can be a difficult one. Working 70, 80 plus hours, stressing, straining over that next deadline, having a complete shutdown at times because you're burnt out, your complete misery is overwhelming you. If that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. It's happened to me. I've invited an expert in this area, Christine McIver, who's faced this exact same issue, climbing the ladder to success. Can't wait for you to listen in. I'm Dr. Nate Sala, and this is A Call to Leadership. Hello, my friend. Welcome to this episode of A Call to Leadership. How are you?
I'm fabulous. I am fabulous. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you all the way from here in the United States. You're in Canada.
I am in Canada.
Yes. How's the weather? People ask you that all the time.
The weather is hot. It is hot. People don't think it gets hot up here. It gets scorching hot.
Yeah, I'll bet it does. Yeah, that's a misnomer. I'm sure it gets cold too.
It does, but you're not a strong Canadian if you can't handle the cold.
That's right. Bring it. Are you? Have you always been a Canadian?
Yes, born and raised.
Yes.
I live about 2.5 hours from where I was born and raised.
And have you always had a desire to be in the media side of business?
Oh gosh, no. It's so funny. Like how I ended up here cracks me up. Like I never even imagined this, not in my wildest dreams. I always knew I wanted to be in my own business as a little girl. And you probably recall me telling this story. As a little girl, I used to play in my dad's office and I would play there. So I'm the 9th of 10 children and my younger brother and I would play in the office. And I would put him at the side table where he was there with the typewriter. And I was at my father's desk with the adding machine. You would appreciate that. I like to play with the adding machine. And I would walk around with my dad's briefcase. And I had no idea what it meant, but I was so attracted to that. I knew it lit me up. It truly lit me up. And my father was in fencing and guide rail in Northern Ontario. He paved through, went through rock and through bush and through all sorts of things like that. That was not a desire of mine, but he inspired me to want to be in my own business. But I had no idea what that was going to look like, Nate. And so after college, what really lit me up was going into human resources. So I was in human resources for about 25 years. And through lots of challenges within the organization, I actually had a mental breakdown. And it gave me the opportunity to step back and really look at what it was that I desired to do in the world and what lit me up. Like I wasn't just looking at how can I make money. It was a time where I needed to really focus in on what is it that really I love and I enjoy, not just what I was good at, because I was actually going to become an accountant, if you can imagine.
I can imagine.
I love numbers. I love playing with numbers. That adding machine inspired me as a young girl. But what really inspired me was supporting other people to become greater than they ever imagined they could be. And so I started down that path in my own business. And it was about, I don't know, three years in, I got a phone call and somebody asked me if I'd ever thought about having my own radio show. I had no clue what that meant, but I had a vision board where I had written up in the corner Blog Talk Radio. And when they said that to me, my eyes lit up and I looked up to it and I swear I heard angels singing, "Oh, this is it." And that's where it began. My first radio show, I cried for the first 15 minutes though. I was every emotion you could imagine: grateful, nervous, excited, overwhelmed, lost, and confused. But I thought, well, it can't get worse than this. So I continued. Here we are.
Someone listening, and I want to just rewind just a little bit, because someone listening is at a place where you were. Someone listening is at either a verge of a mental breakdown or is currently experiencing one at work. And it's so important for us to share these pieces of the adventure, because When people see us, they say, "Oh, wow, you've done this and this, and you're accomplished," and they don't see this necessarily the struggles that you have faced, that I've faced, that many of our wonderful people we've had on the show have faced, and that we share in that struggle. Because, as you had mentioned, it's money can get you to a place, but it doesn't keep you. It doesn't keep you there. There are so many other factors, and the stresses and the strains that people face in work. I'm sure you were excellent at the HR work that you were doing, and there was some level of purpose that you experienced there. But something was happening that was challenging to you. I want to just dig in just a little bit more on where you were and really the pieces that that caused you to say, you know what, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. Well, here was the thing, I went to school, I was a single mother at the time. I went to college, and that we talk about climbing the ladder, and it really felt like that. I was climbing and I was climbing and I was climbing. I've got a baby on my hip, and I'm climbing and I'm climbing and I'm climbing and I'm doing all the things, right? I'm getting up at 6 a.m. I'm staying up till 1 a.m, and I am doing everything that I possibly can. So I finished school. And then I get a job, and now, it's a different type of climbing. Now there's different types of climbing, and you got to look good, and you got to expend money on clothes that you don't have money for because you're a single mom just starting out. And, the climbing and climbing and climbing. And then I got to the next job, and I'm climbing and I'm climbing and I'm climbing. And the pressure continued to rise. So when I secured this position, and it was a fabulous company, my boss was outstanding. And now I have the money, I have the credit card for traveling, I have the office, I have the title, I have all of it. And the pressure was 10 times more. I was working, Nate, we went from 8 to 5, and we had an hour for lunch. I was usually in the office at 7 with my door shut, with the light off, so nobody would know I was in there, and working by the computer light, hoping to get an hour peace so I could get something done. When my daughter was with her father, I would stay there working until 8 o'clock at night. When she was away on the weekend, I would stay there and work on the weekends. I was working probably 80 hours a week. And when I wasn't at work physically, I had a laptop and I was working at home. And so the pressure just to keep ahead, to stay at the level that I was at least at, continued to rise. There was a shift in the organization. My boss left, and everything just broke. Everything broke. And there was expectations that were completely unrealistic. And finally, I broke. And now in reflection, I know that if my body hadn't broke, Nate, I'd still be climbing. And I'd still have pressure. And you and I both know when we're experiencing that takes a massive toll on our relationships, on our mental health, and our physical health. So I'm incredibly grateful. And I know today that it was a gift to just surrender. I had a friend, a colleague, and someone who mentored me, and she said, you're depressed, Christine. I said, no. She said, you need to quit. I'm like, no. Not a chance, right? Because I put so much value and so much stake into the climb. I wasn't present with what was actually occurring in my life and in my body. And so when that occurred, and I had quote unquote no choice, which I don't believe in, but at that time, no choice, it forced me to look at the truth. And I think that we are so blinded by what we want or what we think we're supposed to be doing or everybody else's opinions. Or like you say, we're looking at somebody and we think this is their life. This is what they've created. How am I going to get there? I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z. It forced me to stop and be present and face the truth of what was not working and the impact that it was having on my life, on the impact it was having on my relationship with my children, and most importantly, what was going on inside of me.
Yeah.
It was a huge gift.
What a way to put it. And you think about the society as a whole. What society says is your value, your worth. If you achieve certain level of position or power or prestige, then you've made it, right? However, in many cases, it's not. Those are only a very small part of the equation, and sometimes they can actually take away from your total joy factor. In fact, you probably have a different perspective with those who you get to mentor, including kids, than perhaps parents would have 30 years ago. I know that my son, I don't tell him, look, you're not going to impress me by climbing the ladder for the sake of the ladder. What's going to impress me is just giving your best in your genius zone, wherever that you are passionate about. Don't worry about money. Plan to meet your needs, but don't think because, well, this person has a big house and lots of cars and fancy vacations that they're truly living in joy and happiness, and most importantly, in peace.
So true. My son, my eldest child, when he finished university and he's been working for a couple of years, he came home and he said very casually, Mom, I'm going to move to England from Canada. And I looked at him, I said, that doesn't work for me. And he very nonchalantly closed his computer and he looked at me and he said, there's more than 250 countries in the world, Mom. I'm not living in just one. And I turned around and I thought, I taught him to follow his joy and he's doing it.
Right.
And he has lived in several countries. He is now, enjoying his time in Thailand and traveling through all of Asia, just really experiencing joy and living his life on his terms, not based on other people's expectations, including mine, if you can imagine. And while the mother in me would love to have him next door, the person in me says, good on you. You know what? This is the one life that you have. Choose to be joyful. Everything else will come. In fact, it will come much easier if you will actually operate from the space of joy.
Yeah. And you made an important distinction, because the joy that your son gets to experience is not the joy that's manufactured based on someone else's expectation of what their life should look like. It's tough sometimes for parents. It's tough sometimes for us who we think this is the way you should go. However, we have to release and, as you said, surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's my son actually asked me this years ago. He said, Dad, when I go to school as I get older, do I have to go to school as many years as you did? And I laughed and I said, no, you don't have to. If that's the route that gets you to your desired goals and your hopes and your dreams in life, and where that your giftings are leading you to have purpose and meaning and value, sure, do it. If not, don't even go to college. And for a part-time college educator, his eyes got wide. He's like, I don't have to go to college. I'm like, no, not if it doesn't serve the greater purpose of your life. These are human institutions for specific roles and responsibilities. We've got to challenge the status quo of what we think everyone should fit into, because sometimes you're a round peg and it's a square hole, and we need to find round holes for you. And so there's different ways for every person. We have to expand our understandings and not have a narrow view of what the world should look like for every individual.
100%. And we've got to be willing to allow the change to come that's being asked of us. And I mean from within. When I left that job, I just thought, well, where am I going to get another HR job? That's where my mind went first. And then my nervousness about experiencing something to that degree again. And I really asked a lot of questions, and I sat and meditated, and I did a great deal of soul searching, and I allowed for the change that wanted to come through, and to to do what I do today, to teach people to bring their voice to the world, to teach people to show up in their authenticity and become the experts in their field. What an honor I have. I have such an honor. I pinch myself. And then to have a global presence the way that we do, that's the icing. Yeah. That is truly the icing on the cake. But who would have known that this little girl from a four-corner don't blink little village would be in this space? I never dreamed of it, not once.
Yeah. And I love how you framed that pivotal moment of the mental breakdown as an awakener that allowed you to see a better future state. Many people consider those situations as a failure that is unrecoverable or something to be ashamed of, but it's not at all. It's simply your body telling you, your nervous system telling you, hey, I'm overloaded right now. And we've taken on either too much or too much of the wrong kind of thing that is not healthy for us.
Right.
And to recognize that and to regulate your system and to know, because someone listening right now is like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm on the verge of it, I'm experiencing it. And we want to share that there's hope. There is absolutely hope. And this is just a step. Of course, we want to also encourage the right set of steps to move forward, because this is not a journey that a person takes alone. And I want to just have just a little bit more of your experience and how you move from one space to another with help from others.
Well, it's interesting because I have a dear friend that I told her I went home and I closed the curtains, and I didn't want the outside to come in. I wouldn't answer the phone. I wouldn't answer texts. I did that, pushing away because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I felt like it, I really knocked my character down and my word and my honor. None of that to be true. So my boss, who had left that organization, who was an amazing man, he called me up and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." He says, "Go for a walk." He says, "Go for a walk for at least a half an hour. And then when you're tired, go for another half an hour and then turn around and come home. Goodbye. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And he hung up. And he called me every single day for several weeks and kept saying the same thing to me. And out of that, I was like, okay. So I started to come out and I started to share very slowly. I wish I'd have shared faster, but I started to share very slowly with some close friends around the struggle that I was beginning to have. And what I allowed into my life was leaders that were out there in the world, spiritual leaders that were out there in the world. And Dr. Wayne Dyer was the first one that kind of penetrated through me. And what he said was, if you had a lemon and you squeeze the lemon, what would come out of the lemon? Seems obvious, right? Mm-hmm. Lemon juice. Yeah. And then he said, so like milk wouldn't come out, Coke wouldn't come out. No, lemon juice. So if we squeezed you, what would come out of you? And that really threw me back. And I thought, anger, depression, resentment, that's not what I want to have come out of me. And so I started to do an internal journey, and I really started to heal myself and really look at the space of what's going on within me. I started to read motivational books, and I really started to get in touch with what brings me joy and what my belief systems, because a belief system is just a thought you keep having. It's not something that is, wired hard within you. It's just something you've said yes to. So I challenged my belief systems. I challenged everything that I was thinking. And as I did, I started to find threads of truths, and I started to find very big threads of lies. And as I did this, and I was reaching out to my community, and I was reaching out to people that were also on this journey, I started to create a community of like-minded people that were there to support and listen, not fix me. That was my job. but to support and listen to me. Yeah. And in doing that, I allowed myself to trip occasionally. I allowed myself to grow. And when I was actually willing to be vulnerable with myself and those around me, I started to cultivate the woman that wanted to come through. Without the vulnerability, you will not get to the joy. You will not.
That's so good.
Because your belief that you have to put on a facade is keeping you captive. But your vulnerability, cry. It's okay, cry. I am one of the biggest criers in the world. It's okay. Crying is an emotion that wants to be expressed. Your body is more intelligent than you could possibly know. Allow that energy to come up and through you. Laughter is fantastic, but it's no different than tears. It's just an emotion that is desiring to be expressed. So when we allow these emotions to come through and we allow ourselves to really show up in our vulnerability and in our truth, the strength that comes in is just, it's mind-blowing.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Incidentally, I'm not an anthropologist or study human. I study humans from the psychological level, of course, in leadership, you know that. But interestingly, about crying, as I understand it, humans are the only species on the planet who have been categorized as crying from a position of emotional distress or release. Of course, there are some animals in the animal kingdom that do shed tears, tear duct. However, not from a position of emotional distress. It's unique to humanity. So we're it's okay. And I grew up in an environment, a male sort of environment that said there's a certain age where you've got to stop crying. I was very emotional as a child, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to stop crying. Well, I don't tell that to my son. Look, man, get the emotion out. Allow that to come out of your body, your spirit, and release. And it's okay. It's totally okay. You are no less valuable. You are no less of an individual by doing that. In fact, I respect that. Mm-hmm. I respect a person who has that kind of vulnerability, who can do that. And I want to just make another point, just undergird what you said about the listening and supporting. If you're listening now, and perhaps you have someone in your life who is in that place, I know I have. My wife struggled and suffered for years with debilitating back problems and all kinds of other just physical challenges. And I knew I couldn't fix it, Christine. I could not make any of that go away. And I'm a fixer. I like to solve problems. And there came a point where I had to come to the realization that all I could do is say, honey, I can't solve your problems. I don't even know if it's going to be okay. I just know that I will not leave your side. I will walk with you through every valley, through every peak of this journey we call life. That's the best I can do. And
I love that, because what that reminds me of is something that I express with people oftentimes is we cannot fix someone else. In fact, we rob them of the opportunity to step up into their strength. And if you're someone that right now is struggling, that you're wondering which direction you're going to go in, know that you have the strength within you to change the direction of your life, of where you are in your business, in your relationships, whatever it is. You have the strength. You came here with all the power you required, but your belief system about your strength has got to shift. When I talk to a lot of people about their children, I can't get, Bobby to do this and that. And stop trying to get Bobby to do anything. Believe in Bobby, love Bobby, let Bobby know that he's got what it takes. Be there if Bobby needs you. And I even tell people, stop asking your children at the end of the day, what homework do you have? Did you do your homework? Did you get your homework done? Stop badgering these children. If you own their success, they won't. I said to my daughter one time, just let me be really clear this year, I will never ask you about your homework. But if you need my support, I'm here. But I will never. Do you know what, Nate? That changed everything for her. She began to own it. She knew I wasn't going to pester her. She moved into the 90s as opposed to someone who I had to thought I had to beat her to do her homework, not physically, but you know what I'm saying? Like push, nag. No one wants to be nagged, and no one wants to believe that they don't have the ability. We all have the ability. We came here with it.
Absolutely. And that's part of that inspiration that we that I can, if you're watching this on any of our social media, Christine's backdrop says Inspired Choices Network. So clearly inspiration is a hallmark and foundational to how you do life, how you do leadership. Let's talk about that. So you clearly needed inspiration when you were going through that deep valley of life. And you got it through mentorship, through resources, through a reevaluation of some of the patterns of life that you were experienced and exposed to, and you challenged those.
Yes.
Yeah. How did inspired choice? I love the phraseology of inspired choices, because I believe everything is a choice. When we're children, choices are made for us. When we're adults, we get to make our own choices. And one thing that I believe that we can all choose is our attitude. And so with that foundation, I'd love to hear more about how you inspired this choice for this network and what it means to have inspired choices.
Thank you. This is a story I've shared oftentimes, and it still touches me when those light bulbs went off. When I was looking at what I was going to name my business, because I did know at this point, after the breakdown and going through some training, that I did want to start my own business. And I really started to look at what was it that I wanted, what was the message that I wanted to put out there? And my first thought was, what did I struggle with? And throughout my life, I've often heard myself say, I wish someone would just make a choice for me. I wish someone else would make the choice that I don't know what to make. I keep making terrible choices. This was my belief system, that I made terrible choices and someone else needed to make the choices for me. So as I was thinking this, I went, choices. Okay, choices. And I was looking around my home, and I have 3 plaques on the wall. They have 3 different words on them. The one is imagine, dream, and inspire. And the word just inspire popped at me. And I thought about the word inspire. And I thought about, what does that actually mean? And so the word inspire or inspired is to have the spirit within you. And as I sat with that, I was like, to have the spirit within me make the choices. And that's when the light bulb started to go off, is I have what it takes inside of me to make the choices for my life. And from that came inspired choices. So it's not about anyone else out there. This is about me. This is about me reaching within me and continuing to reach within me to find the direction that I require to create the life that I came here to enjoy. And I believe that everyone's life should be and can be pleasurable. You know, you hear me say this all the time. We should have, business should be pleasurable. If you're doing something in business or school or whatever, and it's not pleasurable, please pay attention to that. There's a message trying to speak to you. And so to have an inspired choice is a guide within you that is going to take you in the direction of your future, to light you up, because we didn't come here to be miserable. Right? We didn't come here to work hard so that we can be exhausted at the end of the day. That's not why we came. We came here to a community to have joy and pleasure and fun and to support and love and to experience all of that.
Yeah.
Where do you get the information? inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. It reminds me of Steve Jobs said, he said, if he was working on the project or doing something for too many days in a row and it didn't bring him joy, or if he didn't enjoy it, wasn't finding it to be his love, he would do something else. I mean, that's the choice.
Yes.
The choice. Someone listening saying, I don't have a choice. You don't know my life. I'm struggling in a place to where if I chose a different route, it would be disaster for me. And those are real thoughts. However, those can also be, and I want to be really sensitive to this, those can also be self-limiting beliefs.
Yes. The first thing that I would ask someone to think about is, if that's how you feel today, can you imagine doing this for another 10 years? And this is not a put down, because I've been there. I'm sure you've been there at some points, Nate. So if you can't imagine being there for another 10 years, can you begin taking one step in the direction of a new choice? Just slightly start to shift it. Put your hand up and ask for help. If there was one thing that I would have done differently in my business, it would be to hire a coach. I had mentors, I had good friends, but I didn't have coaches. And I didn't have strong business coaches that could help to guide me. And I also believe like a strong business coach who also had the sensitivity of the human experience, the psychological piece. I think that's a big piece that we miss. When I'm working with clients, yes, I'm working in your business, but I can see when suddenly you're not happy or you're struggling. And so we go there, right? We go there. So finding someone who can support you from a psychological perspective and a business perspective is excellent. Even if you hired somebody once a month and they gave you some support and guidance, but begin to make a new choice, one step at a time. You're not going to change your entire life, but you can make small steps to begin to move you in a new direction.
Yeah. You ever seen the movie What About Bob? It just reminded me of this. It's really old. It's a Bill Murray movie. So Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss. Richard Dreyfuss was the psychiatrist and Bill Murray was the patient. And
so good.
Right. So good. Right. And so Bill, if you haven't seen it, or if it's kind of fuzzy in your mind, Bill Murray was pestering his psychiatrist, Richard Dreyfuss, and Richard Dreyfuss had just written a book called, I believe it's called Baby Steps. And so it was about taking small steps to healing. And so I won't give it away. It's an excellent movie. If you haven't seen it, it's very comical, but it reflects life. And I bring this up as an example because we don't have to make drastic moves when and sometimes perhaps you do. And this is where the coach and the relationship and the counselor and different professionals can help walk you through your individual situation. However, there are opportunities for incremental change in our lives. And so that incremental change could just be saying no. I found that I've been very overwhelmed in the past and felt as if the ladder I was climbing was crumbling beneath me with massive crisis, because I was saying yes to too much. Because deep down inside, I love to help. And I found that as soon as people recognize that you had a specific set of skills that could help them and others, everyone wanted your skills. And then you say, oh yeah, I'll do that. Sure. And I'll sacrifice this aspect of my life. I'll sacrifice my personal health. I'll sacrifice my relationships. I'll sacrifice my own hobbies and well-being. And then what happens? It's unsustainable. Mm-hmm. And you know this because you face it. I face it. In fact, Walt Disney faced it. And if you've listened to the show at length and heard all the episodes, you'll remember me talking about this. When in I want to say it was 31. So Mickey Mouse was just 2 years old, very successful, and the early stages of the Depression and people needing hope and a sense of purpose and meaning. And Mickey Mouse gave that sort of reassurance for Americana and even the globe. Well, Walt Disney, you think, oh, wow, I'm successful. That's the goal, right? The success is the goal. No, the success is peace and stability and mental well-being and spiritual well-being, emotional well-being. That's the goal, because any level of success is diminished and tarnished and sometimes irrelevant in the face of lack of health. And so he has this breakdown, and he says in his memoirs that he couldn't even talk on the phone without crying. I mean, it was so difficult for him. And he saw his professional community and his doctors and said, you need a vacation. You need a break. You need to get away and get some time so that you can recharge, refocus, reevaluate, and start to say perhaps no to some projects that you might want to do, but they would take an incredible toll on your health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough thing to say no. It's a tough thing, especially when you're driven. You can get this work done. But sometimes it's just that first no.
Right. And I think sometimes you need to have, I had this program called The Pleasure of Business, and I taught the individuals to sit down at their dining room table, perhaps, and see it as their boardroom table, and see that they are every single role. And, would the CEO say this? Would the CEO say yes to everything? Would the CFO agree that that was a smart financial decision? Would the marketing team, really see yourself in all of these roles in your life and say, does this make sense? Does this fit into my plan for what I desire?
100%.
Right. And if your desire is to be happy, to be healthy, to be whole, and to create a life of joy and pleasure, saying no is inevitable. And the more that you become happy, healthy, and whole, people are going to be attracted to that, and they're going to want some of what you're smoking, eating, or drinking, right?
Right?
And so they're going to ask. And you need to check in with the entire boardroom table. Does this actually fit into our plan?
I love it. I love how you're phrasing it, because what it does is it says, hey, first of all, I have to have a plan. I have to have a vision for the future. And your vision will determine your steps and your destination. I oftentimes, when I'm in my coaching environment and a student of mine says, hey, Nate, this is what I want to do, I'll ask them, is it in your vision? Is it in your plan? And if the answer is no, then the answer is no. Then don't do it. And so with you outlining it with all the different members of your board or your C-suite, if you will, even if they're you put on the different hat and look at it from a different angle based on that role and responsibility. And then you vet it against the plan, the vision.
Exactly.
And it's an important, and I think what also helps with that process of doing it that way, Christine, is that it takes the pressure off of you to say, oh my goodness, I'm letting someone down, or I know I could help. No, it's not that. It's that I've set certain boundaries because I know that if I don't make good on this commitment, then I'll be tarnishing my integrity. Because if I've made a commitment to a plan and a process and a vision to myself and to my stakeholders, could be my family, could be my friends, my community, could be my business as a whole, all of those factors and those pieces, then what does it mean? What message does it send to them when I compromise that because of my own inability to have the decision-making, the discipline, and the boundaries to say no to activities that do not fit into those commitments to that vision.
Right. And when we say yes to things that don't fit in and we suffer the consequences, we oftentimes have resentment. And we might have resentment to someone that really, they just asked, you're the one that said yes. But then we start to turn it around on ourselves and we start to have resentment at our own self. And that resentment turned inside is poison. In AA, they talk about resentment being the thing that can actually kill you, is because it is poison turned inside out. So honoring what really will work for you collectively with all the areas of your life is one way to keep you healthy. And saying no to someone else, I mean, a lot of people have a hard time saying no. So one of the things that I would suggest is that you say is, thank you very much for asking. That just doesn't really fit into my plan at this time.
Yeah.
They can't argue with that. They can't argue with that.
They cannot. And it's liberating for us. And it takes the pressure off of us because it's not me letting you down. It's me letting you know that, at this time, at this juncture in life, it's not a fit. I'm thankful. I've actually happened to me. I was invited to join a board for the Missouri chapter of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. So Frederick Douglass was an abolitionist. He was a former slave and just did great work in the Civil War era. And just I love his work. I love his education and his teaching. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity it is to join the board. And they wanted me to handle a lot of the accounting and the financial side of it, right? So I thought, oh, wow. And I was like, the yes wanted to come out of my mouth. And then I remembered, no, Nate, vet it against your vision. As much as you would love to do this, and I talked with some of my peers and my spouse and determined that as much as I would absolutely love to do this, it's not in my vision and it's not in the plan. And I had to explain that in a way that said, I am so honored that this was an opportunity for me. However, it would be tarnishing and diminishing the integrity I have for commitment to my vision and those who I've committed to. So I'm going to have to say no at this point. And the response was, wow, I respect that, Nate. I respect that you explain that. I respect that you have that you're clear on your vision and your commitments. And we'll check back at another time.
Right. So it's not maybe a no forever, right? It's a no for now, for what works in your vision. And we all have a vision. We just may not have written it all down.
Yes, and that's absolutely another episode altogether. So the vision process. In fact, I think I might have even done a couple episodes on that. I'll have to put them in the show notes on the vision, because vision is essential. It's so important in our journey. And you are so important. I'm so glad this time goes by so fast. And I got to have you back, because I want to talk more about the show. I want to talk more about your how you've evolved as a leader and how you continue to inspire people. You've inspired me, and I'm so thankful for you. But before we go, I have a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Now, this show, of course, as you know, as many of our listeners know, this is not rehearsed. I don't send you a list of questions, and this is just us having a conversation that's extemporaneous or off the cuff, as we like to say, unrehearsed, right? So one day you will be at the what we call the Great Summit, the end of the journey, and you'll look back at everything that you've done, every person who you've been able to interact with, and you'll have it all behind you. What would you like to be remembered by at that time on that Great Summit?
You're going to make me cry. At this time, I would like to be remembered for someone who loved deeply and supported others. Period. That's it. It's not about business. It's not about money. It's about, I love people, and I love to support other people to become the best that they can possibly be. I'm known as a cheerleader, and I want to be known as the cheerleader who loved deeply.
Well, you are on your way.
Thank you,
Christine. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for asking me. I loved the conversation.
Absolutely. Invigorating.